Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have been out for close to a month now, and with that in mind, it's safe to assume that most of us have gotten to experience the Pokedex and all the new Pokemon that Paldea has to offer. There are a ton of new wacky designs that are completely original, and of course some surprising paradox forms which recall familiar Pokemon from both the past and the future without explicitly stating biological relation, though they totally are related, let's be real. But there are a few intriguing Pokemon in the Pokedex here that I think need to be examined closer, because I think they might have some uncanny similarities to pre-existing Pokemon from prior generations, some of which appear in Paldea and further support my ideas here. These might be biological relations, similar origins, their roles in the Paldean food chain, ecology, and the general web of life, or something else kind of surprising. Consider this video a rapid fire of mini-theories that aren't quite big enough for their own video, but interesting ones enough that I wanted to dive into. Let's get into it. First, I made a video a few weeks ago discussing the strange new Pokemon Mousehold, so I won't go too in-depth here, but since it's on topic, it's worth bringing up regardless. Basically, I argued that Mousehold has a lot of characteristics that point to it not being a real mouse Pokemon, so to speak, but rather a lab-grown cellular life form similar to Ditto that specializes in mitosis rather than adaptation, a dividing cell rather than a stem cell. Go ahead and check out that full theory if you haven't already, because I want to move on to the first true theory of today. What's the deal with Bramblegast? This is far from one of the most popular Pokemon in Paldea, but it's really one of my favorites, probably because of its typing, since Ghost and Grass are some of my favorite Pokemon types. But Bramblegast also bears quite an uncanny resemblance to Dhelmise, another favorite of mine. You can see it visually alone. The branches of Bramblegast curve upwards, almost like the anchor of Dhelmise. Plus it has heterochromatic eyes, one red on black, one black on red, almost to look like the one eye open, one closed cracked eye sported by Dhelmise, right? Let's take a look at Bramblegast's Pokedex entries, which highlight its ability to open the branches on its head to envelop its prey and absorb its life energy. Now, Dhelmise sports roughly the same ability, using its green seaweed to suck away its foe's vitality. Granted, it's not the weirdest thing for two ghost types to share the same propensity for stealing life energy, but it is interesting that two seemingly disconnected Pokemon both use plant-like appendages to do the exact same thing to survive. What's more, both of these Pokemon are not the tumbleweed, the seaweed, or even the anchor themselves, but spirits infusing themselves with these physical elements. In the case of Ramblin', we learn that this was a soul unable to move on to the afterlife, that was blown around by the wind until it got tangled up with some dried grass and became a Pokemon. In the case of Dhelmise, it's the soul of seaweed, whatever that means, which became merged with debris from a sunken ship and was reborn as a ghost-type Pokemon. So a whole lot of similarities between these two Pokemon, the only difference beyond the obvious ones being the fact that Bramblin evolves into Bramblegast, whereas Dhelmise is a single-stage entity. There's plenty of possible theories here, the first big ones being Bramblegast and Dhelmise possibly existing as convergent species, two types of spirit Pokemon that undergo the same survival mechanism, fusing with a plant-like object or physical structure and using that physical force to suck the vitality of other Pokemon. The other theory I have is that perhaps Bramblegast is Dhelmise. Tumbleweed, after all, is just dried grass that lives on by blowing in the wind. The Asado Desert is pretty close to the ocean on Paldea's northwestern coast. Perhaps a Dhelmise had a few stray pieces of seaweed get blown off of it in the breeze, pieces that contained its consciousness, blowing themselves to the Asado Desert and getting baked dry under the hot desert sun, thus becoming the massive dried grass that we know as Bramblegast. It's just an idea, however, but it is interesting to think about regardless, and I believe there are way too many similarities between these ghost and grass types to ignore. Now my second theory of the day. I was struck with this one early on when playing through Paldea, on the way to the bug gym when I was running through a field of Yungoos, which are quite common in Paldea, and I suddenly found this dog Pokemon, Maschiff. Hell, it even looks like Yungoos to the point where I thought it was from the back, given its nearly identical yellow tufts on brown fur combinations. Also consider its teeth. which are almost identical, perfectly triangular, and almost always visible, in something of a grimace expression. Their Pokédex entries also highlight similar jaw strengths, both implying that these Pokemon are adept at biting. Now let's turn to their evolutions, Gumshoos and Maschiff, where it's evident these physical similarities end, so this is not an example of convergent evolution. However, there is still a relationship to be found here. Consider their inspirations, with Maschiff's inspirations and protective nature towards family implying a mafia or yakuza boss role, and Gumshoos' propensity to stake out foes and track them down implying a role as a detective. You see what I mean? A criminal and a detective in the same region, with perhaps the pre-evolution Maschiff looking like Yungoos to blend in the wild. Not convergent evolution, but some kind of rudimentary mimicry. A criminal trying to disguise itself in plain sight. You see what I mean? I think this could be supported by the fact that I believe Yungoos might be native to Paldea. Consider the fact that this goes beyond some species of mongooses being native to Paldea's real-world counterpart Spain, with the Egyptian mongoose living in the wild around the Mediterranean, including southern parts of Spain. I mean, we know Yungoos aren't native to Alola. This is a fact given many times throughout those games. They were brought to Alola to keep the Rattata population under control. So what if these Pokemon, Yungoos and Gumshoos, first developed their tracking and sleuthing abilities from their time in Paldea, with a natural rivalry with the Maschiff line? Of course, we don't see this rivalry in the wild in Paldea, so to speak, but again, it's worth a theory at least, and it all derives from how I really think Maschiff's appearance mimicking Yungoos's, in some respect, is no accident. So those are two theories I have regarding some new Pokemon in the Paldea region. What do you think? Do the similarities and the coincidences that I pointed out line up to any possible connections, or are they best left as theories? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time for more content.